Evening and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting for Thursday, June 12th. I would like to call it to order at 6:30 p.m. The next item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. We'll start with May 8th, 2025. So moved. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain.
Abstain.
And then we'll move to May 22nd, 2025.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right. Moving right along. We do not have our student representative this evening, so we will move to the next public comment. Seeing none, we will move right to reports and discussion. And we will begin with the first reading of the policies that we put in the packet the last meeting so that you had time to review them. Take that, Fred.
Yes, Madam Chair. So these are having to do with harassment, non-discrimination. Much of them have been rewritten to go with the latest language and verbiage that has been handed down. So the first one is non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. Any comments, questions?
I just have a couple of things to point out. On that second sentence there on the first page, there's just a period after members that probably needs to be eliminated. And then in point number 3 and number 5, just adding the ing, we just need to correct some of the spelling.
Yep.
And then
Which, by the way, we corrected the policy subcommittee, but didn't get done. But anyways, yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay, and then I'm sure this would happen, but obviously then just renumbering the statements.
Yes, you're talking about from where it says public schools, that promoting should be number 1 now.
Correct.
Yes.
So with those small edits, are we okay to bring this back for a second reading?
Yes.
Okay. The second is non-discrimination on the basis of sex. And just a couple of words, essentially phrases have been changed.
I just had a question about this one, and obviously I'm new to the committee. So is this the current practice, and we're just updating the policy to reflect the current practice?
Yeah, sometimes in some of the policies, just in general, some of it is just to comply with the latest verbiage, which is in this case, and some of it is a policy can change completely. So there's a lot of these in here have been more of just updating the overall language versus changing a policy and making a dramatic change to it.
Okay.
So in this one here, it's just some extra language that's been added.
Okay, so the superintendent is currently the one that designates that individual?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we're good to move this to second reading. All right, third is sexual harassment prevention policy.
Any questions?
As you can see, just a tremendous amount has just been rewritten, but there's no, major policy changes, just rewritten. Jackie?
just one clarifying question. Anywhere where it said sexual harassment, it's being replaced with unlawful sexual harassment. So the last sentence in the third paragraph, should that also say the definition of unlawful sexual harassment?
On the first page?
Yes.
So basically, response probably to complaints of,
This policy covers this section.
oh, I see. This policy covers any,
No, well, there also.
yeah.
But the paragraph above it, that starts with, it should be noted that
Yes.
while this policy sets, the last sentence says regardless of whether that conduct satisfies the definition of sexual harassment, because we're saying unlawful sexual harassment throughout the document, should that also say it? As well as the next paragraph that Mr. Duvall pointed out, and you probably have to go, there's more in the document.
Maybe we'll bring this back.
Yeah, I think, we'll just bring it back to, and Melissa's not here tonight, but I think what we'll do is we'll have her review it, and again, if, depending upon the language, the question is, should that be in there all the time, or is this the words that are supposed to be used? So, very fair, very good question. Okay, next is Title IX, Policy and Procedures. And again, a lot of this has been completely rewritten. So any questions, comments on this?
This whole thing's gone.
Goes on in this one. Any questions? No? Then we're good to proceed to second reading on this. The next is non-discrimination on the basis of disability, and there is just on the second page one word. It's the word district has been it replaces school system. Any questions on this one? No? Okay, this will proceed to second reading. Next was equal employment opportunity. Any questions on this? No? Okay, that will proceed as well.
So we'll just bring that one back to the subcommittee, and the rest will move on to second reading. All right, moving down to the overview of the school committee financial responsibilities.
Good evening, school committee. I'm Michael McMillan, the school business manager. So I thought it might be helpful just to provide an overview of the financial responsibilities of the school district, school committee. Partly this comes from my own experience of being on committees and not really understanding what I'm signing for and why, and I just thought it might be helpful to give people a full sort of overview of what the school committee is responsible for. If you like, just take this as a very, very early start to next year's budget process. So I'm just going to cover, I'll be quick, if you have any questions along the way, please ask. I'm going to cover budget responsibilities, in-year, financial monitoring, expenditure approval, capital and debt, policies, and student activity accounts. And again, also partly, I know that I often come, and we're going to come to you for some votes later in this meeting, and I just want to not always give you the full context of why we're asking for those votes, and so that's also part of this, the purpose of this presentation. I'm not going to cover everything because I'm respectful of your time and your attention and your interest, but I won't, this isn't all the topics, and this isn't even all the topics within the topics, but it should just give you a feel for the range and the reasons that we're asking you to make some of these decisions. So obviously budget, and that's probably the one you're most familiar with. So for each of these items, I included a little table at the bottom about the actual legally required votes you have. The budget process runs from around October through to May, and it can extend on either end. You will have the opportunity to approve the calendar, which will include a vote on, which includes the public hearing date. And then you will you will receive, information on preliminary trends and estimates and recommendations, and eventually you will adopt the budget and the assessments, which will go to the towns. So you may be aware, within the regional agreement, there is a requirement for you to approve by two-thirds, you need to approve the draft budget in subcommittee, and then in the full committee majority votes. But the actual budget itself has to be approved by a two-thirds vote of the committee. And any budget amendments which increase the budget. You can reduce the budget, but if you want to increase it, that's a two-thirds vote, then it goes to the towns for local approval, because you're asking for more money from them. So that's the key things, and within the school committee's responsibilities, approving the budget, and we'll approve it at the major account level. So we break down the budget into these kind of big buckets that we get from the state, and that's the level at which you approve the budget, and then during the year, so we'll talk about, it's the level at which you make budget transfers as well. And then you also help, and we help with engaging stakeholders such as town officials and the town representatives and families and school community in the budget process. So some of the things we're thinking about as we're developing budget, and some of the things I'm thinking about when I'm presenting to you are, does the budget meet the strategic priorities of the district? What are the financial risks, like utilities, substitute costs, special education costs, those sort of risks which we don't have direct control over, which can impact our budget, enrollment, student needs, and obviously how that's going to impact the assessments, and then how we engage stakeholders. So that's real quick. We'll get into a lot more detail on the budget when we get into the budget process, but that just gives you a sense of the key decisions that you'll be responsible for as a school committee. And then once the budget's up and running, so as we head into FY26, we have our FY26 budget already approved. I'll be providing to you regular quarterly financial reports that will include expenditure and revenue to date, forecasts through to the end of the year, developing trends and areas for concerns. We'll also, so if there are within those major accounts, if we see any of those major accounts looking like they'll be over budget, then I'll need a vote from you to change the major account budget to accommodate that fluctuation. So for example, if transportation blows up and we're spending a lot more money on transportation, then I might have to come to you and ask to transfer money from one of those major accounts where we have more discretionary expenditure, like instructional materials, and move that over into pupil services where we pay for transportation. And that's the sort of decision that I will need your approval before we can do that, because you've approved it at the major account level. We also include in the quarterly reports, one of the things we've got in the habit of doing is when there's an issue of importance to the school committee, I've started including it as a regular update item. So we had, federal funding from COVID was one of the regular updates, not there anymore, but two we still carry is student activities. So we provide an update and we included that in the policy. And investments, so when the district invests money in treasury bonds, then we keep that, we give you a little update on that each quarter. So that is something, and if you ever, if there's ever anything you would like to see a regular update on or review, we can add that to the quarterly report. So as I mentioned, line item budget transfers are one that we'll request from the school committee. And then the fourth quarter report, which will be the end of year budget report, and I'll be doing that soon for FY25, that's when we often do the tidying up of any overages or overages of major accounts. And the aim is to keep the total number no more than was originally approved. So, as I say, these are the sort of questions I'm trying to answer in the quarterly report. Like, are we on track with the current budget? What are the major variances and why? So utilities is a good example. I think I already prepared to be explaining to you why natural gas is more expensive than we thought it was going to be, and why electricity is going up as well. The other thing, and we've started to include in the quarterly reports updates on facility projects, because they're often a big part of our budget request. So if we're requesting to purchase a truck or to install a new rooftop unit, I've started including updates in the quarterly reports on those so that you can see that we are implementing the budget as you approved it in detail and in the major account level. And then revenue is revenue on track with expectations. The biggest part of our revenue is our assessments. That's always on target because that's the money we get from the town. They've agreed to give it to us and they just give it to us on a schedule. But there are other things like grants or other funds that we don't necessarily have control over, and we'll provide updates on those if they fluctuate significantly year to year. So then, the one thing you'll probably do the most is approve expenditure. Every meeting, we give you the warrant, it's called, which is the collection of vouchers, and you sign off on those vouchers because, as the legal representation of the district, your approval is required before we can spend a dime. So that's why you have to approve these every meeting. So we don't send out checks to vendors until after every school committee meeting, after you've approved all these vouchers. We also have designated one school committee member to approve the payroll warrant. So all these are accounts payable. So these are, accounts payable is when we're paying for goods or services. But we also have a payroll warrant, which will be in a blue folder you'll see when it's there. And that's for your approval to do payroll. Now, because with accounts payable, we can wait for you to approve it to pay a check to a vendor. With payroll, we can't wait because we pay people on 2-week cycles. So that's why you elected for one member, currently Mrs. Siebert Long, to be the representative of the school committee. So that was a new law that came in a few years ago now that allowed school committees to give signing authority for warrants over to one member. And so we also can use that authority in emergencies. So if for some reason school committee doesn't happen, we are able to, you've nominated 2 people we can use to sign on AP warrants, accounts payable warrants as well. So I often think, I have some sympathy for you because when you see this thing you're signing off on, it's this huge list of bills, and how on earth can you know really what you're signing off on? And I think largely what you're approving is that you're comfortable with the process. You're comfortable and you have trust and confidence in the process. So here's what this process, so I'm just going to show you what the process is. I know this is super exciting, but this might not be why you joined school committee, but it is one of the fun parts of it. So, I'll be real quick. So requisitions are created. That's just a request to spend money. And this is all through our accounting system. It gets approved by so a teacher might raise a requisition. It gets approved by the principal and director. If it's over $500, it goes to the superintendent as well. It then comes to me. I make sure it's the right account number. I make sure all procurement processes have been followed properly. Often if it's a significant purchase, I've been involved earlier in the process, but if I haven't, this is my opportunity to make sure we've got the quotes we needed, or there's a state contract, or we've gone out to bid, anything like that. And then once it's been approved, it gets turned into a purchase order, and that gets sent to the vendor. So we won't pay, under Massachusetts general law, we're not allowed to pay for goods or services we've not received. So a purchase order is a sort of contract where we say to someone, if you give us those goods or services, we will pay for them once we've received them. So they get the purchase order, we then get the goods or services, and the vendor sends invoice to us, to our AP person, and then we do a 3-way check with the invoice, the original purchase order, and the recipient of the good or service to make sure everything ties up. And that is when we put together those beautiful vouchers into the warrant. And that's sort of what you're signing off on. And then the next day, we issue a check we issue the payment by check, or we increasingly do ACH, so direct transfers through the banks, which I'm a big fan of because it reduces the risk of checks getting lost in the mail. We don't have to pay postage, and it's more efficient and is less open to risk. So just real quick, I know I'm doing a lot, but I'll be quick. So I just want to show you what this is that you're signing off on. So this is the front page, is obviously the fund page, is the summary of the voucher. So we break the vouchers up really by sort of a administrative convenience. So we do it by bank account. So we have a number of bank accounts. Most of the time, so all the big purchases we make, the big one is because before we make a purchase, we transfer money into the purchasing account, and then we pay out of that account. So it means that balance goes to zero. We also have accounts for food service, because it's a special fund. It comes from federal funded money, and we have accounts for student activities. So those generally are in different vouchers, so we can keep them separate. And then we also, if we have ACH payments, we separate them out as well. So that's why you're signing multiple vouchers, because of different account numbers we use and also different types of payment. You'll also see, if you're interested, the second page shows you the funds that they're coming out of. So if it's a food service one, it's always just one. And that's one thing we have to make. I'm always checking that we've not made a mistake, that we've not accidentally got the wrong fund on that voucher. But if you see the vendor warrant, it's called, where it's lots of the funds will be listed, that's the general fund. That's when we're just our regular account. So it might be grants will come out of the same account as all the general fund, and you'll see a whole list of all the funds that are being drawn on to pay for that voucher. And then the other thing that's in there, as well as all the invoices, is a detailed listing that shows you. So it shows up here the vendor that we're paying, and then the different descriptions of what we're paying them for. So this is a food service one, so Ahold Financial Services, which is Stop and Shop, I think, and we were buying groceries from them. So if you ever leaf through, and you see a vendor, and we also include a summary of all the vendors we've paid, just so it's a quick, easy way for you to see. So if you ever see a vendor you're not sure about, or a big number that you'd like more information about, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to provide any and all information that would be helpful. All right, so that was the expenditure process. Capital and debt approval, just highlighting this. This is something we've been getting into a bit more in the last few years. We're doing more debt. I think this is going to be on the horizon as well. We've got big projects in the pipeline and probably ones coming down the pike as well. So as part of the budget process, we'll provide to you a 5 to 10 year capital plan. And we're also required to get your approval before issuing debt. And that's the 2 votes there. And that's one of the 2/3 votes that are required. There's not many, but one of them is approval of debt. So, and then the questions I'm thinking about is, are we prioritizing the right project? So when you get a list, and that's where we've had some interesting conversations at school committee, because we presented a list of priorities that we think is most important for school committee, for the district. And we've had some discussion about, is that the right order? Should we be doing, the track this year and the roof the following year, or do they need to get swapped? How do we decide which projects to do first? And there is a lot of objective criteria, but there is also subjective judgment calls, and that's why your input is always so helpful. And then how do those impact? That's been, when we were deciding the debt project, big question that we were asked a lot was, well, how is this going to impact on non-debt? Like, how are you going to be able to afford to continue to hire the same number of teachers and purchase the same number of supplies while you're paying debt payments as well over here? And that's something else we need to think about. And also, can we find other funding sources to help, like grants, the MSBA, to help with that? Policies and contracts, we obviously do a lot of this work. There's a lot of financial policies that impact this process. And so you're also responsible for signing all the collective bargaining agreements. And also, there is one other thing. So any contracts over 3 years require school committee approval. So occasionally it behooves us to have like a 5-year contract. So right now, actually, we're out to bid for childcare services. So at Harwich, we have childcare services provided out of 3 classrooms at Harwich. So because stability is a priority for that program, we're planning, it was a 3-year contract with the option to extend for 2 more years, so it'll be 5 years in total. So that will require school committee approval. And I think that's just because we're exposing ourselves to a greater degree of risk by having a longer contract, and that's why you're required to approve it. So the sort of questions I'm thinking about is, are the policies sufficient to meet the needs and expectations of the school committee? So, for example, we adjusted the student activity policy to include a regular report to school committee, so you know what was happening. Are we mitigating risks if we have long-term contracts, employment contracts fit for purpose, and so on. And student activities. So those are funds. Those are technically student funds that we manage on behalf of the students. So simplest as notion, if you have a chess club and the kids all pay to be members of the chess club, we look after the money for them, and they can use that to purchase chessboards, chess pieces, and go to chess competitions. So we just help manage that money, but we do, so as you can imagine, the amounts of money in those funds can be significant, like tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there has been a lot of, theft, because it's hard to track that money. There's a lot of money coming and going, and not in this district. In other districts, there's across the state, there's been a lot of money spent either not what students intended it for, so not necessarily it's been stolen, but say it's been used to buy Chromebooks or, materials for classrooms, but that's not what it's for. It's for students to spend however they want. So the state has put in place a lot of laws around how student activity accounts are managed. And we really just help make sure that those rules are followed and that the students get to spend the money the way they like to. So often we'll come and say, is it okay if the students spend the money on this thing? So we've got this transparency and you approve it. And as long as the process has been followed, we can't really say no because it's their money. And often I'll say to the auditor, hey, is this okay? And others will say, well, if the students have approved it and it's not actually, anything nefarious, then yes, the students can spend the money on that thing. So that, for example, donations. Technically, school districts aren't allowed to make donations because, this is public money. It's supposed to go for the purpose of the school district. We are not allowed to give money to worthy causes, no matter how worthy. However, students can. But just because there's that sort of wrinkle, the state recommends that we bring donations to you for approval. And that's why we've got like 3 today, because students want to give money, and we just make sure that you're comfortable that the processes are being followed properly and the money's going to something that seems reasonable and legitimate. We are required to have their student activity accounts are audited every year. They're audited internally every year and externally every 3 years. And so the one other thing you do have legal requirement to do is the creation of student activity funds, like the Jiu-Jitsu club. So it's up to you to approve that gets set up. So that's just you. So partly your job is just ensuring that is a reasonable purpose for student activities. So it's going to be used for outside non-curricular activities. So if we ever came and said we'd like a student activity, for library books, that's probably not reasonable because that's really a curricular need that the district should be funding and not requiring students to pay for. So are those appropriate? Are processes in place to ensure effective and secure management of student funds? And that's why we have a pretty detailed student activity policy that the Policy Review Committee approved a few years ago. Okay, that's it. I hope that was helpful. I went fast. But,
very helpful.
All right, good. And if you ever have any more questions related or unrelated.
Any questions, comments? All right,
All right, thank you very much.
moving right along.
Oh, actually, I'm not going anywhere.
Nope, you're not. To the appointment of the Chief Procurement Officer.
So, the Chief Procurement Officer is a legally defined role within a school, within any public authority in Massachusetts, and you're required to have a Chief Procurement Officer to follow certain procurement processes. The most commonly used one is request for proposals. So, if a contract is more than $100,000, there's 2 ways you can procure it. One is an invitation for bids, and when you get those bids, you just have to go with the lowest. And the other way is requests for proposals. And those requests for proposals, you can review the bids you receive using a comparative criteria, and then go with whichever one is most advantageous to the district. It doesn't necessarily have to be the cheapest. The RFP process, you need a Chief Procurement Officer for. So the business manager has been fulfilling the role of the Chief Procurement Officer, and the role of Chief Procurement Officer was included in the business manager responsibilities when that job description was created. So you could say and the school committee voted on that job description, so you could say you had already approved that role. But when I checked with the Attorney General's office, they were like, yeah, you could, but just to be on the safe side, why don't you just ask your school committee to vote to formally appoint the business manager as a Chief Procurement Officer?
So is this a one-time?
One and done.
Okay.
And it applies, interestingly, well, not really interesting, but it applies to the role, not the person. So you'll never have to do it again, because even after I leave and you have a new person, then they just automatically become the Chief Procurement Officer.
Any questions? Comments? Dr. Carpenter?
You're not allowed to leave.
What do you mean? Once I'm Chief Procurement Officer, I'm going nowhere.
Ms. Seabright-Long?
Would you like a motion?
I'd love one.
All right. I move to appoint the school business manager as the Chief Procurement Officer for Monomoy Regional School District in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Excellent.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Change the business card.
Okay, so next on our agenda is the 2025-2026 Subcommittee Preferences. So you all have a blank chart in your agenda packet with all of the different subcommittees, representatives, and liaisons that we are part of. So what Brad and I would really love from you is to kind of pick 5 places that you would like, and if you could just put next to them, 1 to 5, so that when we're looking at this, we can really try to do the best to your first and second choices, and then we'll see where that gets us.
Can I
Betty?
just make one clarifying point?
Yes.
Because I don't know that everyone understands. We all need to be on subcommittees, which is that first column on the left. So just be sure that we should at least each pick a minimum of 2 over there, so that our subcommittees are full.
Yes, 2 subcommittees, and then 2 or 3 of the representative liaisons. Missy Britlow?
I had one question, under subcommittee and representative, warrant and payroll is listed there. Do we need a representative for warrant and payroll as well as a subcommittee? So it's the second to last under subcommittees, and then representatives, it's the last one.
Right, I thought it was just 1.
The number of people.
So,
Not the number of people,
we
just,
have warrant and payroll under subcommittees and warrant and payroll
Oh.
under representatives, but isn't it just here?
It's just, we've
Yeah.
never had a warrant and payroll subcommittee.
Okay,
Right,
so
so
that
just-
that was an error. So
Okay,
you can
great.
cross out warrant, don't sign up for warrant and payroll
Yeah.
subcommittee.
Or do.
Does not exist.
Yeah, or do.
That is my
It
number
never
one.
meets, yeah.
Yes.
and my second.
Yep, go
Sorry.
ahead.
My second question is, under liaisons, we have strategic plan steering subcommittee. Is that something we're still actively anticipating to maintain? Because it's in process.
Right. I feel like maybe if we have the liaisons in case we need,
Perfect.
so that might be one that won't meet often, but we'll have somebody assigned if we need it. Any other questions? So if you can get this to me, I can have Roberta send us a digital version of it through email. And if you could get it to me at the latest, the 20th, Brad and I will meet that weekend to kind of shake it all out. Sound good? All right. Next, we have the donation to the supply bank for schools affected by the California fires.
You skipped school.
No, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. The meeting dates for the summer workshop. So you have the calendar dates in your packet. And after we filled out the doodle,
Yep.
the most common date was July 24th with a start time at 5 o'clock. Are we all okay with that? Okay. And then our other summer meetings would be July 10th at the regular time, 6:30, and August 14th at 6:30. Are you okay with that? Dr. Carpenter?
And just for that, for that workshop, I think really the intent is if there are things that the committee as a whole or individuals would like to have Robin, Michael, and I sort of pull together data to have conversations with, with the committee and administration on sort of long-term, strategic planning things related to the school committee, budget, capital. It's really to look at that. The Cape and Islands superintendents are actually going to engage the town managers almost in a parallel conversation, just regionally. What our numbers are saying and what they're seeing. But again, it's to start thinking, long-term, what should the committee be thinking about, particularly, sort of like what's our enrollment telling us, the demographic shifts telling us, the capital needs telling us. But we can add anything to that. We just need, a heads up in terms of what data to go pull to have, ready for you to present to you.
Ms. Seabright-Long?
I think at our last meeting, we started a conversation, which we're not going to tonight, but just about what we would like to do for our workshop. So will that be part of our July 10th agenda so that we can discuss it, so that it's ready for the July 24th workshop? Because we're not discussing it tonight, and I think that's our only opportunity. Because I think we started to talk about it, and I don't remember where we left off.
The way we left it is if you had specific things that you wanted to talk about, because when they presented, they talked about the regional agreement and the strategic plan and all the things. And if there were specifics, to reach out to me or to Scott. So we hadn't gotten anything so far, so that's why this is just another ask for anything specific. Otherwise, it's kind of going to be an overview of how our strategic plan is laid out and part of the regional agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to have anyone walk away from the 24th and say, oh, I was hoping you'd also do this.
So I would say that's a good reminder for me. But I think in my head, I thought we were bringing it back to also come up with a theme or a goal for our workshop. That I think every year we kind of do something very specific that we want to also talk about, as well as everything else that they're going to bring. So we had a couple things we were talking about at our last meeting, and I didn't know if that was something we were revisiting on the 10th, to also add, like as a committee, deciding that that is a theme that we want to also talk about, or have a speaker come, or whatever it is. Or are we just going to do whatever Scott and Robin's outline is, which is completely fine too.
I think we can, the chair and vice chair and I can work on that, like a draft agenda, and have it be an agenda item for the 10th.
Perfect.
And I had one more, Mary. Actually, it was two, but no, it's one. I know every year we do our meeting schedule, and then every year people are like, oh, I wish our meeting wasn't on the same night as this, and I wish our meeting wasn't on the same night as that. And I know it's impossible, but I just want to bring it up again as a reminder that if anyone has anything, any suggestions or anything that they want to move or change, like now would be the time, because the next thing we know, we're deep into the school and we're like, oh, it's the play tonight, or it's the school band, or, we can't do it all, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I feel like we run into that all the time. It's great.
And I think the hard part about that is that we don't get those dates as far in advance as we get these dates. And so we're in the middle of the school year, and then all those dates come out, and then we're just like, oh, it's one show, and it's on the school committee meeting night. So I don't know how that message gets relayed to the other
People scheduling.
yeah, the other people who are scheduling the events. And I don't know that they have a choice either, because I don't know what the availability is for the auditorium.
Yeah.
Are you thinking suggesting that we change the night of the meetings?
Well, the
for
next
whole
thing I was
year?
going to say is, an option could be, do we feel like things tend to fall on Thursday evenings? Is that as simple as it is? If things tend to fall on Thursday evenings, then we have to talk about shifting the meeting date. But I'm not suggesting that, I'm just saying.
Right.
Maybe we could suggest to the building principals to look at this calendar when they're doing things like the band and choral concert from the middle school.
Yes.
Or,
High school.
because
Yes.
they're the ones who actually are doing it, and it's into the year before they even do it.
Correct.
And it's also, I think, around the holiday season and around the end of the year, there's almost something every night.
Right.
And it's sort of, so it's hard not to have something land on that night.
100%. I just put it out there before we're like, oh, why didn't we do this?
Yeah. So are we okay to keep them on Thursdays? And hope to talk to the administration to see if, even if some of them shifted, that would be nice for us to be able to attend. All right, and we're good with these summer dates too? Okay. All right. Now we will move on to the donation to the supply bank for schools affected by the California fires.
The school committee. So we have a few different donation requests from student activity accounts. The first one is just $58.08 to supplybank.org, which is a Californian charity to provide support for for classrooms hit by, for schools hit hard by the fires in California.
Any discussion?
Going to make a motion?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation of $58.08 from the Monomoy Regional High School Student Cultural Committee to supplybank.org.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
The next request is $700 to Sharing Kindness from the Hope Squad.
Do I have a motion? Ms. Gray?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation of $700 from the Monomoy Regional High School Hope Squad to Sharing Kindness.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
And then the final donation is $280 from the Student Council account to the Chatham Fire and Rescue Department.
Ms. Gray?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation of $280 from the Monomoy Regional High School Student Council account to the Chatham Fire Rescue Department.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Questions?
I just have a question. I was flipping through the warrants and I saw $280 to the Hubbard Family Charity. Is that the same as this? Is this the Hubbard Family Charity?
Yeah, so it's the Fire and Rescue Department raised money for a swim. Sorry, that
The polar
yes,
plunge.
the polar plunge on
So
April
this
Fool's Day.
is the high school student
Yeah.
council account giving a donation to the polar plunge?
Yes, exactly.
But we're
which is
listing it
going
as
to-
the Chatham Fire Rescue Department?
That is a good. Yes, you're right. That is.
Okay. I don't
incorrect.
know if it needs to be more clarified, but I just happened
I think we
to see
should.
it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I just
think
want
we
to make
should
sure
fix
it's
that.
not like we're just making a
Yeah,
ominous donation to Chatham Fire and Rescue, which would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But
would you? I think it wouldn't hurt to
can
amend
we,
the.
can we amend the, can we amend the
Yes,
motion to
100%.
include that, and
Yeah.
that would work?
Yes, I think that'd be perfect.
So what does it need to be?
Betty, so what is the actual,
The April Fool's Polar Plunge, sponsored by the Chatham Fire Rescue Department, maybe that would work?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Betty, are you willing to amend your
Absolutely.
motion?
I'd like to amend my motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation of $280 from the Monomoy Regional High School Student Council account to the April Fool's Polar Plunge put on by the Chatham Fire
Perfect.
Rescue
Yeah.
Department.
Brad, do you still second that?
I still second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right. Your student activity account.
All right, we've received a request to set up a jiu-jitsu club at the high school. The details are provided here. They would like to set up a jiu-jitsu club to teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu to improve student discipline, help with anxiety and stress, achieve ranks, and compete in outside tournaments. They have a plan for raising funds and, the expenditure that's required, and this requires your approval so that we can set up an activity for it in our student activities account.
Have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the creation of a student activity account for the Jiu-Jitsu Club.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? All right, moving right along.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. To our subcommittee reports, we did have a middle school building committee update. Where we talked about the phasing plan. We were excited to be able to talk about the fact that both towns are supporting this project and voted to support it at their town meetings and Harwich's ballot. So that was exciting, and now we're kind of on the timeline, and I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Carpenter.
Sure. Just other little FYIs. The next building committee meeting is this coming Tuesday, 5 p.m. At the conference room at the middle school. Tom Reed, who was a Chatham rep for the building committee, has moved from Chatham to Hingham. And David Whitcomb has volunteered to come out of retirement from building committees to fill the Chatham vacancy there. So David actually came to the meeting and was bringing himself up to speed quickly. Just in terms of where we are in the designing process, the committee sort of did vote that last week to use a fiber cement product for the siding. Just for points of reference, you'll find on the Chatham Annex and the Chatham Police Station, that's a fiber cement clapboard that is used in those, and those buildings have been up longer than I've been here and still look in great shape. There's a similar fiber cement a product used on the new truck dock that's down in Stage Harbor in Chatham, that's more of a shingle look. But again, it's a fiber cement product. So yeah, probably the most common fiber cement product that people hear of is Hardy. Tends to have most of the fiber cement products that are going up on buildings, but you can't write a bid spec to have a particular Hardy product. There are two other products out there. One's a company called Allura, which has very similar shades. I actually think Allura is kind of a little bit more interesting. They have more of a wood grain that they put into their fiber cement. And then there's another company that's Nichiha, also has one. I believe it's a Japanese company, but they manufacture in the United States, so we shouldn't have any sort of tariff issues there. The other thing, besides sort of focusing on the fiber cement, big piece of it is just whether it should be sort of all a shingle look, all a clapboard look, have shingle over clapboard, or have some white accent panels, some sort of white relief panels. So we didn't, as a subcommittee, come in to make a decision on what the siding should look like. The architects will be bringing multiple drawings of the building done up, hearing the feedback, that one of the diagrams had a little too much white paneling, so they've sort of peeled it back, and from there, so they have a number of different diagrams that they'll bring to us, but we're getting closer to that time where we need to kind of say, okay, this is what the whole outside scheme is going to look like, because the key timeline that we're focused on is to have the bid specs done, ready to go, out to bid at the end of July. The other big decision that needs to be made, hopefully at this coming week's building committee, is the windows. So the current windows at the middle school, you have like a window that opens at the bottom, and you have a transom way up high that you actually need to get a pole to go and open. So, so there's conversations about, should they both open in? Should they have one open in, one open out, which is sort of the way the current windows work. Or, we were pointing out, the high school has instead of sort of two separate openings, there's one larger sort of lower opening, and there were conversations and diagrams about, how ADA, sort of, you have to be able to go and reach, the various windows. So they're going to have, again, different drawings of different window openings, and we need to go and make that decision. So in terms of that timeline, as I said, July 31st is when we need to have the drawings. ready to go so that we're ready to go out to bid. Ideally, that would have a contractor sort of identified as we're heading into September, and the windows themselves are going to have about a 5-month lead time to go have the windows show up on site, which would have us, as we head into March, having hopefully all the supplies needed. So the next thing that we've been working on behind the scenes is sort of a phasing plan, because we're not going to be bringing in like a series of trailers and evacuating sections of the building into trailers. We've got enough space in the building to do that internally. So I've drafted a phasing plan and have kind of bounced it off the middle school administration and our architects and our project manager to go have a phasing meeting before the building committee meeting in terms of, do we, at least the little draft I made is that we try to knock no more than 8 classrooms offline at a time and sort of shift into spaces temporarily for roughly 3 weeks while they do large swaths of the building. Then we can move into those swaths, evacuate into 8 spaces and get it done so that, so ideally the project should be really rocking and rolling roughly April 1st, maybe if weather permits a few weeks earlier than that, and then conclude mid-August. So we have, we've been talking about, we're heading into the summer, so we're not going to go put out sort of diagrams of, hey, here's what the middle school building's going to look like. But when we come back, as we're heading back to school, we'll be putting stuff out to everyone saying, there's going to be a construction project. You're not going to walk into school at the middle school next year, under construction, but you'll leave for the summer with it under construction. There'll be some spots in that building that we'll get to. Probably the last 2 phases of a 6-phase plan would need to happen over the summer. Let's see, and is there anything else? I think that's it. So.
Any questions? All right, moving right along to the superintendent's report.
So in terms of recognitions, first of all, I'd like to really compliment the high school team on everything they did to have a really successful graduation. The weather didn't cooperate with us, but I also think that, this is the second time in, the last dozen years that we've had to retreat inside with the graduation. And there's something about the intimacy being in the auditorium that I think has really made for nice graduations, even though, we've been inside. So great job, team there. Next, there's a video series created about the computer science program at Monomoy Regional High School that's been recognized with another award. The students who participated as narrators for this project were honored with a bronze award in the narration and voiceover craft category by the Telly Awards. The Telly Awards honor excellence in video and television across all screens, receiving over 13,000 entries globally from 6 continents and all 50 states. The Telly Award winners represent work from some of the most respected advertising agencies, television stations, production companies, and publishers around the world. The students honored for their voiceover work were Alexis Ardua, Thomas Chase, Alexa Ford, Wellington Holmes, Patrick Jordan, Peyton McRoberts, and Mayur Patel. The video series was produced in collaboration with Chris Seifert of Mooncusser Films and can be found on the Monomoy Regional School District website. Many thanks to Lisa Perna from Get Outside Cape Cod for the donation of 50 trail guide books to Monomoy Regional Middle School students. These guides will help our students explore our community this summer. On Wednesday, Monomoy Regional High School celebrated the expansion of the Shore Pantry, an initiative to combat food insecurity in the community. The pantry is run by students enrolled in the high school Shore program which provides vocational training and transitional services to young adults ages 18 to 22 with autism and intellectual disabilities. Students oversee the day-to-day operations of the pantry, which serves daily snacks for 100 students and provides food boxes for more than 30 Harwich families each week, in addition to the weekly food donations from the local Harwich store. The Stop and Shop school food pantry program has committed a total of $10,000 to support the shore pantry and stock its shelves with nutritious food. Stop and Shop also partners with the shore program to hire students in its Harwich store. After the ribbon cutting ceremony on Wednesday of this week, Stop and Shop food truck provided ice cream sundaes to the students and attendees. Many thanks to the students and educators in the shore program for their hard work on this important project, and thank you to Stop and Shop for their continued support of our entire school community. And then I just want to sort of end my report just with sort of like the somber note. We had, sort of a season of celebration and excitement, but I know as I was heading into convocation, I, like many others, had just gone to, the visiting hours at the Chapman Funeral Home, the Blues Funeral Home for Pat Smith, who was an educator at Harwich Elementary School, and Pat had been with us working with our families for 25 years. And, Pat, I think when we looked at it, Pat had touched the lives of about 1 in 9 students in this school district over her time. And I know that she'll be greatly missed by her colleagues. And it's been a tough year in particular for Harwich Elementary that's had losses on really both ends of the school year.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. We do have a few action items to take care of. The first being the second reading for the policies that are in our packet.
Okay, Madam Chair, I want to make the motion that for policy files BBBC, BCA, BCB, BDD, BDE, BDG, BEC, BEDA be approved in accordance of how it was presented during the first reading and the consistency of presenting tonight.
Second,
Second?
any discussion?
I just have a question, and I keep rereading it, and at the last meeting, I didn't say anything, but the BBBC policy, the first one, school committee member resignation, I just wanted to clarify, said individual's duties as a committee member are terminated upon receipt unless a specific date has been stated in the notification, or is it just that it's terminated? Like, I know it's trying to say it's terminated like as soon as they receive the letter of resignation, but does it need to clarify the date of the letter of resignation reflects the termination? And if it's just not clear to me, or doesn't need to be clearer, I'm okay with that. I keep rereading it, and I'm like, I know that's what it's trying to say.
The way I had read it was that, if the letter of resignation is received, to be terminated on that day unless that there has been another date, it could be 2 weeks later or whatever that agreed upon. So
I
that's
read
the
it
way
the same.
that I had interpreted it.
Right, and I'm interpreting that that's the intent. I just didn't know if it had to further specify the date of the resignation letter reflects the date of immediate termination unless otherwise specified, or whatever verbiage. But again, I could be overreading it.
Any other comments on that at all? Was it clear? Because obviously the whole thing about these policies, we want to make sure that they're clear.
I think when I'm reading it that way, Jackie, I'm seeing it as once the town clerk receives it, it's immediate unless there's a date in the letter. Because it says,
For the date that they
once
receive
it's
it would be the
submitted
date.
So the
to
date
the
they
town
receive it,
clerk.
not the date it's prepared.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then my second question, just on that one, is just question. If you move, it says member move out of town of Chatham or Harwich prior to expiration of that term, is a resignation letter required? Steve's smiling.
It's a good question.
Welcome back, Steve.
I think I think it is once you are no longer a resident of that town.
You cannot you cannot be a resident, you cannot be a member of about 99% of any of the town committees if you no longer live in that town. So, again, you would hope that somebody is going to be officially resigning too. So,
Right, so I'm wondering if we have to put in there that a resignation letter is required for, I don't know, due diligence, documentation.
I almost think they're saying the opposite. If you don't submit your resignation and you move, you're done.
Well, I think it provides the fail-safe that if somebody moves but doesn't,
Right.
you can move forward with filling the vacancy. Like a vacancy gets created even without the
So
letter.
shall be deemed vacated.
yeah,
which-
again,
which-
so you would hope that somebody is going to be sending and letting everybody know that they're going to be leaving. But if somebody is, again, the way that I looked at it, and I don't know the rest of the subcommittee, but if you move and it's found that you have moved and you're still trying to be in the committee, you are out immediately.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't understand it, it's just the difference between a policy and assumption, and the assumption of a policy. So I guess what I'm saying is it leaves room. I'm okay with it until something happens, if it were, and yes, I would absolutely, yes, it would automatically, you're moving out. But we did have this occur, and someone did submit a letter of resignation and formality. We also had someone who just disappeared. But no letter of resignation was ever, and it was very ominous as to what the procedure was.
But if
Because
you,
we never received the letter of resignation, but we
Sure.
weren't sure if we could, what the formality of proceeding with that vacated seat was.
you could also say is if you have it in here and saying there's supposed to be a letter of resignation, but you never get that, and they just vacate and they leave, then you can't hold it up because of you haven't received a letter of resignation. So again, the way that I see what everybody else thinks, but the way I would look at it is if you found out that you have left, you can no longer be a member. You could have somebody theoretically still coming to a meeting and, have moved 3 towns away. But if they're found out that they are no longer living in the town, they don't need to send a letter of resignation.
Right.
They're out immediately. Right?
Isn't this covered by that last sentence where it says a school committee term of office shall be deemed vacated? So if they move out, that their term is deemed
they're out.
vacated,
They're out.
is how I'm interpreting that.
Right. But could somebody, the extreme, somebody keep coming to a meeting and not send a letter of resignation? Highly unlikely. It's possible.
When we were at the Chatham School Committee, we had a member who had a house in Chatham and a house in Florida, and took their son to Florida to go to school. But they still had a house in Chatham, and they would come back occasionally and come to school committee meetings. So, you're right, it's a very gray area. So,
We've had everything. We've had everything.
So then they didn't really officially move in that situation, like give up one house and go take another, so it was a
Did
split
they? Are we
residence.
proving residency?
Right? But that's a great
Well,
question.
so the other thing, we could bring this back to the subcommittee, policy subcommittee, to discuss the issue.
Just that,
Which I would recommend
Sure.
we do.
yeah.
All right, so we're going to can you amend your motion?
Yes.
Please.
I'm going to, motion is going to be, make a motion that the policy files BCA, BCB, BDD, BDE, BDG, BEC, and BEDA be approved on the second reading, consistent with the first reading, and is presented tonight.
Betty, do you still second?
Still second.
I just have one more comment, sorry.
Sure.
It's on BEDA, and just that second line, there's just a parentheses after holidays that should probably be removed.
BEDA?
BEDA, the notification of school committee meetings.
So last one.
I'm sorry, Ryan,
Say
can
it
you say that
again.
again?
Just on that second line, After holidays, there's a parenthesis, but there's no other parenthesis in that sentence, so just suggest that we remove that.
Oh, got it. Okay. So with that minor change, are we still okay to
Yes.
move forward? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay.
And then, so file BBBC would go back to the subcommittee
Yes.
for discussion.
We also have an action item this evening to vote on establishing or allowing the establishment of the MRHS indoor track and field team. Ms. Seabright Long?
Motion to approve the Monomoy Regional High School indoor track and field team.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, excellent. We have had the presentation of warrants, and I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we will adjourn our meeting at 7:35 PM. Have a good night.